Back here on HQ Spotlight, we have a Big Ten title game rematch. Number 3 Penn State hosting number 6 Oregon for their annual whiteout on Saturday night. Penn State has won 6 straight whiteout games. However, we know James Franklin in the big games, it is always a hot topic of conversation, right? And as mentioned, Oregon beat Penn State 45-37 in that Big Ten championship. Last season, Penn State allowed the most points in that game in any game since 2016 in the Rose Bowl versus USC. Oregon has also won 22 straight regular season games. So we are going to preview this matchup. We always know whiteouts get a little crazy. We're going to talk with Chip Patterson here and Danny Kanell. Oregon beating Penn State last year at the Big Ten championship, and Penn State let up a whole lot of points in the process. So, DK, I'll come to you first here. What do we know about this version of Penn State, this version of Oregon for Saturday that might, have a little bit of a different outcome, if you will?
Yeah, I think these two teams are a totally different complexion, right? I mean, Penn State does have a lot of returners, but they also lost a lot of pieces there. They're also breaking in a new defensive coordinator in Jim Knowles. And I would say maybe even a little bit more concerning, they haven't been as impressive as they've been in years past versus, in their first 3 games this season. The best thing that I think you have going for Penn State, because a lot has been made of James Franklin's record versus top 5 teams. Good news, Oregon is ranked number 6, so this won't count for them, and maybe this is one that actually they can get going in the right direction. But Drew Aller's back. He's been a little bit underwhelming so far, but it almost feels, and Chip, I'm curious to know what you think about this, it almost feels like they've been using this as a preseason, kind of playing with their food a little bit. The urgency hasn't exactly been there, but now in a whiteout, it's time to see if they can flip that switch when the lights come on.
Yeah, and thankfully, DK, they've got a little bit more familiarity than you might think, because new defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, oh, wait, he went against Oregon and offensive coordinator Will Stein twice last year, once in the regular season and then, of course, again in the college football playoff. I think this is a great example of some of the new rivalries that we have in the Big Ten, because Penn State and Oregon played for it. They're playing in one of the biggest games of the early season here, and who knows, maybe we'll see them meet again in the Big Ten championship or in the college football playoff. So kind of a nice modern Big Ten rivalry between schools that are on way opposite ends of the map.
Literally opposite sides of the country. So Oregon, the 6th ranked team, they've won 22 straight regular season games. We can just list off all the accolades there, but it still feels like, Chip, they're playing with a chip on their shoulder, if you will, when they think of that absolutely embarrassing CFP outing that we saw last season.
Yeah, that's not who they were. The final result, the way they started, is not representative whatsoever of the team that was 13-0, the only unbeaten team as we entered the college football playoff. And I do think that motivation comes from the top down. It comes from Dan Lanning, and it comes from this staff. And they've been able to impart that on a group of leaders that really have had to step up. Guys like Dante Moore, who backed up Dylan Gabriel all of last year. Guys like Mateo Uiagalelei, who's kind of always been waiting to emerge as one of the most dynamic players in college football. It has been something that has made it easy for Oregon to be able to play a little more hair on fire than I think Penn State has had, because while Penn State came in with all the accolades and all the notoriety, Oregon's been having to prove that last year was not a mirage, and I think that is what's led to a lot of the lopsided scores that we've seen from the Ducks so far in their 4-0 start.
The most forgotten story of last college football season was the Oregon Ducks were perfect. They ran the table in the regular season, won the Big Ten championship in their first year in the league, and yet all everyone has talked about is their Rose Bowl performance, which was embarrassing. And Dan Lanning, I think, has worn that on his sleeve. Like, he has not been shy about how embarrassing that performance was for him and his program. And they have had that chip on their shoulder, Jacqueline. They have played a little bit irritated because they want to get that taste out of their mouth, and they have been absolutely annihilating their opponents. Sometimes you can have good losses in program history. Sometimes they play out throughout the course of a season. You have an early season loss, sort of motivates you to raise your level of play to another level. I think the Rose Bowl, as ugly as it felt and as bad as it felt for Oregon Duck fans at the time, I think that was a good loss because of what it's meant for this team, for their focus, for their motivation, and for their mindset approaching this season.
All right. And guys, when we were talking about the Big Ten and the quarterback situation for multiple teams, there was a lot of them that had question marks and sort of unproven quarterback situations. Oregon was one of them with Dante Moore. We didn't really know what he was going to look like, but he looks pretty darn good, Danny. Do you think he's one of the top quarterbacks in college football or emerging that way based off of what you've seen so far?
Jacqueline, I think he's at the top of the class of the first-year starters, like the guys that we had expectations for. There have been so many big names out there that had more offseason hype than Dante Moore. It was kind of like an afterthought probably because his freshman year, when he's forced into action as a true freshman at UCLA, it wasn't spectacular. He struggled with interceptions. Then he kind of goes and he's forgotten about. But Chip mentioned it earlier. I thought the reps that he was able to get behind Dylan Gabriel, watching a true veteran prepare for the game in the same system you're in, I thought those were incredibly invaluable to him. So now he gets the opportunity, and he has absolutely ran with it. And I think, even calling him a first-year starter, he did start a lot of football games as a true freshman. So even those reps were really valuable for him. But I think he's playing with a tremendous amount of confidence. Will Stein feels like he's dialing up plays, and he's got one of those arms that you just see it and you're like, whoa, did he just throw that? The ball comes off really effortlessly. It's beautiful ball, nice tight spiral, and he's got the athleticism with inside the pocket to be able to make plays. He could be at the end of the season, Jacqueline, one of those quarterbacks that's the top of any class at the end of the season. But to me, this is the type of prove it where you can announce yourself to the national scene, hey, I'm one of the big boys in this game. No one's been paying enough attention to me, but of course you have to go out and prove it first.
DK, I love that because I'm thinking about day trading Danny and the way that this stock keeps going up and up and up, the way that this performance keeps going up and up and up, because Oregon quarterback Dante Moore is coming into this showdown off his best performance as a Ducks starter. Against Oregon State, he had a season high for yards with 305. He had a season high for passing touchdowns with 4. And as he continues to get all of those reps and build up that experience, now he is putting himself in the position where, he has been operating at peak efficiency. And that's not something that we can necessarily say for the quarterback across on the other sideline, who maybe has been, as we mentioned earlier, not necessarily forced to ramp up to go 100 miles an hour. So for Dante Moore, what a moment for him against, admittedly, not only the best defense that he's faced so far, but maybe the best defense he'll face all season long. So I love how he's been building and getting better each week, but this is going to be a monumental challenge against the Nittany Lions.
All right, let's talk about the Penn State side of things because it's their first true test for the season as well. We love to talk about James Franklin, top 5, top 6 opponents, James Franklin in the big moments, but the stat splits for Drew Aller against, ranked versus unranked is really not the best either. So, Chip, what do you think a win here would do for Drew Aller and Penn State in this environment with all the stakes that we're talking about here?
Jacqueline, it would answer my biggest doubt about whether Penn State can win the national championship. Because what you just saw on the screen is one of the reasons why I acknowledge all of Drew Aller's tools, and I love to watch the way that he is able to perform in many games on Penn State's schedule. But sometimes the mistakes that we have seen him make in a game against Ohio State, in the playoff loss to Notre Dame, they are easily fixable mistakes. So that's the good news, Penn State fans. You just need your star quarterback to be able to just fix some of those mental errors, to put all the physical tools together to be able to go out there and get it done when the stage is the biggest and the lights are the brightest. But he still really needs to do that against a team like Oregon for me to be all the way in. So, yeah, if he does this against this Oregon team, then I will feel more confident in Penn State's ability to win the Big Ten and win the national championship.
Coming into the season, I didn't think there was another player with as much pressure on him to rise to the occasion than Drew Aller. I mean, so many people had this Penn State team, myself included, to win the national championship, and it was based on a faith, a belief that Drew Aller would take that next step in some of those big games. Well, through the first 3 games, it's been kind of pedestrian. Granted, he's working with new wide receivers as they have a slew of them in there for the first time, but you would have hoped it would have been a little bit crisper going into this game. But this is the game. This is the game where Drew Aller has to step up and be that difference maker, something he hasn't been in those games, as our statistics referenced. And speaking of bad taste in the mouth, how about the last time he was on the field? Penn State could have settled for overtime, but they said, you know what? Let's give our quarterback a chance to go out there and win the game. What does he do? Against Notre Dame? Throws an interception. Notre Dame goes, scores a field goal. Game over. Season ends. This is a huge opportunity for Drew Aller to prove to his critics and to also prove to his backers, like I have been, that he has taken that next step forward, that he can go out there and make the big plays on the biggest stages, which is very clearly something he hasn't done yet.
All right, guys, really quickly, game prediction time. Danny, who do you like here?
All right, subject to change, Jacqueline, because we still have like 6 days before the game.
Okay.
Early lean is Penn State 27, Oregon 21. Dante Moore, first huge game in a whiteout like atmosphere. That has traditionally been a spot this year where younger quarterbacks have struggled, and I think it'll be slightly more hostile than 12,000 at Northwestern on the lake. I think it'll be just a little bit more hostile than that.
Yeah, I think we're kind of seeing this the same. My prediction is Penn State, whiteout conditions, defense gets it done. Nittany Lions 28, Oregon 26. Ducks hang tight. Nittany Lions don't cover the number as we see it now, but they get that win, and that's what counts the most for James Franklin.
All right, the guys are rolling with Penn State. Guys, we appreciate it. An Oregon-Penn State preview again. That's Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. For more on that matchup and the whole college football slate, make sure you check out the Cover 3 podcast. You can hear Chip and Danny there. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code on your screen.